The stars had seen countless wars, but none like the one that came with the Varkon Empire. For centuries, their fleets had swept across the galaxy like a storm, conquering one world after another. Their ships were massive, dark, and silent, moving through space with the calm confidence of something that had never known defeat. The Varkons believed no species could stand against them. Their weapons burned through planetary shields. Their soldiers crushed resistance, and their cold, logical minds saw war as nothing but a calculation. In their long history, no battle had ever lasted more than a few hours. Entire civilizations had surrendered before their second fleet even arrived. And then they reached Sector 9 Gamma, a quiet corner of the Milky Way where a small, blue planet circled a yellow star. They called it Earth. When their scanners first detected the humans, the Varkons were amused. The species was young, barely reaching the stars, with small colonies scattered on nearby moons and planets. To them, humanity was insignificant, another primitive race waiting to kneel before the Empire. But as the Varkon fleet moved closer, something unexpected happened. Their long-range sensors picked up a single ship, one human vessel drifting at the edge of the system near the asteroid belt. Its name appeared in their databases, HSS Valiant, a Terran warship that had gone missing 3 years ago during a patrol in deep space. The Varkon Admiral, Zerath Kal, considered it an easy first target. "One ship," he said coldly. "Destroy it and the rest will surrender." He sent forward his vanguard fleet, 20 heavy cruisers, each one the size of a small city. They approached the Valiant like hunters closing in on prey. Inside the command bridge of the Valiant, Captain Arya Grant stood quietly, watching the incoming fleet on the main display. Her ship was old, its hull scarred from past battles, its engines half repaired after years lost in deep space. But her crew, barely 100 humans, were calm. They had seen worse. "Captain," said Lieutenant Harris, his voice steady but tense, "they're broadcasting. The Varkon Admiral demands surrender." Arya gave a small smile. "Let's see what he wants." The communication screen flickered, revealing Admiral Zerath, a tall reptilian figure with eyes that glowed faintly blue. His voice was smooth and emotionless. "Human vessel," he said, "you are surrounded. Lower your shields and surrender your ship. Resistance is illogical." Captain Arya stood tall. Her voice was calm but sharp. "You're entering Terran space. You're the ones who should surrender." A ripple of laughter echoed across the Varkon bridge, but Zerath didn't smile. "You cannot stop what is coming, human. Worlds have fallen before us. You are nothing." Arya looked at him, her gaze unwavering. "We'll see." When the transmission ended, the Valiant was silent for a moment. Then Arya turned to her crew. "All right, everyone," she said quietly. "They think they're gods. Let's remind them what humans do when someone tells us to bow." The bridge came alive with movement. Engineers worked fast, rerouting power through old systems. The ship's AI Echo began calculating firing trajectories. Every crew member knew the odds. They were facing 20 warships with only one damaged cruiser. But not a single person hesitated, because they were human. And humans had a strange habit of fighting hardest when defeat seemed certain. Outside, space lit up as the Varkon ships opened fire. Streams of plasma and energy beams crossed the void. The first wave hit the Valiant's shields, shaking the entire ship. Panels cracked, alarms blared, and the hull groaned under the impact. "Shields at 60%, Harris shouted. "Return fire," Arya ordered calmly. The Valiant's railguns roared. Blue streaks of magnetized metal cut through the dark, striking one of the Varkon cruisers. It wasn't enough to destroy it, but it made the alien admiral pause. The humans weren't running. They were fighting. Inside the Varkon flagship, Zerath watched the display. "Interesting," he said. "Their ship should not have this level of resistance." His second officer turned to him. "Shall we increase firepower, Admiral?" "No," Zerath replied. "Let's study them first. I want to know how they think." But while the Varkon studied, the humans acted. Arya's crew executed a dangerous maneuver, diving into the asteroid field nearby. The Varkons followed, but the massive size of their ships made it difficult to move quickly between the rocks. The Valiant, small and agile, used the terrain as a weapon. It hid among the asteroids, firing in short, sharp bursts before vanishing again. Every strike from the Valiant damaged the enemy just enough to sow confusion. The Varkons had never fought like this before. Their wars were clean, organized, predictable. The humans fought like chaos itself, turning every obstacle into an advantage. Hours passed. The battle raged on. By the end of the first day, the Varkons had lost 2 ships. The humans, against all logic, were still alive. Zirath Kal stood at his command deck staring at the display in disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered. "One ship cannot destroy my cruisers." His second officer hesitated. "Admiral, perhaps we should call for reinforcements." Zirath's eyes narrowed. "No, I will not ask for help against one primitive vessel." Meanwhile, inside the Valiant, the crew was exhausted but determined. The engineering deck was filled with smoke and power conduits sparked with each movement. Still, no one left their station. "Status report," Arya shouted. "Engines holding at 50%. Shields at 30. Weapons operational," Echo replied. Arya smiled faintly. "Good. Let's keep giving them surprises." She looked out the viewport where distant stars shone beyond the chaos of battle. For a brief moment, she thought about Earth, the oceans, the mountains, and the people who had no idea that their fate rested on one small ship fighting in the darkness. "This isn't just for us," she said quietly. "It's for everyone back home." As if hearing her, the crew worked harder. The Valiant's railguns glowed red-hot as they fired again, targeting weak points in enemy formations. Every hit sent shockwaves through the Varkon fleet. The humans were not fighting to win. They were fighting to prove something. To show that no matter how advanced their enemies were, humanity's spirit could not be crushed. By the time the Varkons finally withdrew to regroup, silence filled the space around the asteroid field. The Valiant floated among the debris, its hull battered but still intact. Lieutenant Harris turned to his captain. "We did it. We actually made them retreat." Arya nodded slowly. "For now. But they'll be back. They don't know how to lose." She looked at the stars, her expression calm but resolute. "And we'll be ready." Far away on the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Zarath stared into the void where the human ship had vanished. For the first time in his long life, he felt something unfamiliar. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was curiosity. "What are these humans?" he whispered. "How can one ship defy an empire?" The galaxy was silent after the first battle. The Varkon fleet had retreated to a safe distance, leaving behind only wreckage and the memory of defeat. To the Varkons, it was a small loss, a matter of pride, not power. To humanity, it was a miracle. The news spread fast. Across human colonies, in mining stations, and orbital cities, people whispered the same words. One ship made them retreat. The story of HSS Valiant became a legend within days. Some thought it was a myth. Others believed it was a sign that humanity could stand against anything. But no one knew the truth, except the 100 souls still aboard that damaged warship. Inside the Valiant, the atmosphere was heavy but hopeful. The ship floated quietly in the asteroid field, surrounded by debris and drifting metal. The crew worked non-stop to repair what they could. Sparks flew, tools clanked, and voices echoed through narrow corridors. Captain Arya Grant stood on the bridge, looking at the main display. The ship's AI, Echo, projected a 3-dimensional map of the surrounding space. Most systems were dark red, damaged or offline. "How long until we can move again?" she asked. Echo replied in its calm, mechanical voice. "Estimated repair time, 36 hours. Engines at 40% capacity. Shields recharging." Lieutenant Harris sighed. "That's not enough if they come back." "They will," Arya said softly. "They always do." She turned to look at her crew. Despite exhaustion, none of them complained. Each face showed determination. These weren't just soldiers, they were survivors. Every one of them understood what was at stake. In the silence of space, far from home, they carried the weight of humanity's hope. Far away, inside the Varkon command ship Oblivion's Edge, Admiral Zarath Kal sat in his dark command chamber. The room was filled with blue light from tactical screens showing data about the Valiant. Every movement of the human ship had been recorded, analyzed, and studied. Zarath's second officer, Commander Vera, entered quietly. "Admiral, our scouts report that the human ship is hiding within the asteroid field. Its energy readings are unstable." "Good," Zarath said. "They are wounded. Shall we attack again?" Zarath didn't answer right away. He stood slowly, walking toward the central holomap. His eyes narrowed. "Not yet. I want to understand them," he said. They fought with no logic. They used damaged systems, yet still managed to destroy 2 cruisers. It was unexpected. Commander Vera tilted her head. Perhaps it was luck. Zerath looked at her sharply. No, not luck, instinct. Something these humans have that our kind lacks. He paused, then gave his command. Prepare the second fleet. We will not simply destroy them. We will study how they resist, and when we learn, we will crush their entire world. On the Valiant, the next day began with a quiet hum. Power was slowly returning and lights flickered across the corridors. Chief Engineer Thomas Reed, his hands covered in grease, looked proud as he reported to the captain. Engines are stable again, Captain. We can move if we have to. Arya nodded. Good work, Thomas. He smiled faintly. We're not out of trouble yet, but at least we won't die standing still. Echo interrupted. Captain, long-range sensors have detected movement. Multiple signatures approaching. Estimated time to arrival, 12 hours. Everyone on the bridge fell silent. Lieutenant Harris spoke first. The Varkons? Yes, Echo confirmed. A fleet of 40 ships. Arya looked out the viewport at the endless blackness of space. She didn't show fear, only calm focus. All right, she said. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the Varkons are on the move. If we fail here, they'll reach home next. Harris nodded and began transmitting. In Earth Command, deep beneath the surface of the planet, alarms blared. Generals, admirals, and diplomats gathered in the war room. The image of Captain Arya appeared on the main screen, flickering with static. This is Captain Grant of the HSS Valiant, she said firmly. The Varkons are bringing reinforcements. 40 ships. We'll hold them off as long as we can. A silence filled the room as her words sank in. General Marcus Hale leaned forward. Captain, you can't fight them alone. Fall back to Earth, we'll prepare defenses. Arya shook her head. If we lead them to Earth, they'll destroy everything. We'll stay here and slow them down. Her voice was steady, filled with conviction. Humanity needs time. We'll give it to them. The transmission ended. In that moment, everyone in Earth Command understood what she intended. She wasn't planning to survive, she was planning to make a stand. Hours later, the stars lit up once more. The second battle of Sector 9 Gamma began. The Varkon fleet emerged from hyperspace, forming a massive wall of metal and light. Their weapons glowed. Their engines roared through the silence of the void. It was a sight of pure power, an empire on the move, and in front of them, standing alone, was one small ship, the Valiant. Enemy fleet in visual range, Echo reported. Arya stood at the center of the bridge. Target the lead ship. Fire on my mark, her crew was ready. Their hands moved across glowing panels. The hum of the ship's railguns echoed through the deck. Mark. The Valiant fired. A single rail slug shot across space, slamming into the lead Varkon cruiser. Its shields flared and collapsed. Fire spread across its hull. Direct hit, Harris shouted. The Varkons returned fire instantly. Hundreds of plasma bolts tore through the void. The Valiant weaved and rolled, using the asteroids as cover. Massive explosions lit up space as rocks shattered around them. Shields down to 40%. Echo warned, keep moving, Arya commanded. Never stop moving. The battle turned into a dance of light and shadow. The Valiant darted between asteroids, launching torpedoes and countermeasures. Every maneuver was a risk, every shot carefully planned. The crew moved like one heartbeat. No hesitation, no fear. Inside the Varkon command ship, Admiral Zerath watched in silence. He had expected a quick victory. Instead, he saw chaos again. The humans didn't fight to win, they fought to survive, and that made them unpredictable. Admiral, Commander Vera said nervously, they've destroyed 3 more of our ships. Zerath clenched his jaw. Impossible. Focus all fire on their engines. But the humans had anticipated that. Arya's voice was calm over the intercom. Prepare the decoy charges. Tomas activated a sequence and several drones flew from the Valiant, each projecting the same energy signature as the ship. The Varkons fired at the fakes, missing the real target completely. It was a simple human trick, something born not of superior technology, but of clever thinking. It confused the Varkon targeting systems long enough for the Valiant to strike again. A massive explosion shook the enemy formation as another cruiser was destroyed. For the first time, the mighty Varkon fleet hesitated. Zerath slammed his hand on the console. Enough, bring the dreadnought online. At the edge of the fleet, a massive ship began to awaken. It was 10 times the size of any cruiser. with energy cores glowing like small suns. The Varkon dreadnought, a ship built to end wars. When its main cannon charged, space itself seemed to vibrate. The light was blinding even from a distance. Echo's voice grew sharp. "Captain, energy spike detected. If that cannon fires, we will not survive." Arya looked calm. "Understood. Harris, prepare all countermeasures. Thomas, reroute everything to shields. Echo, calculate the trajectory of that cannon." Echo paused. "There is only one chance. Then we'll take it." The dreadnought fired. A beam of energy brighter than any star tore across the void, cutting through asteroids, burning debris to dust. The Valiant turned sharply, using every ounce of power in its thrusters. The beam grazed the ship's side, tearing half of its armor away. Inside the bridge, lights flickered. Alarm screamed. "We're hit!" Harris shouted. "We've lost weapons control." Arya gritted her teeth. "Then we'll use what's left." She looked at Echo. "Ready the jump drive." Echo hesitated. "Captain, the system is unstable. If we use it now, it could destroy the ship." "I know," Arya said softly, "but it might save Earth." Her crew understood. No one argued. Every one of them took a deep breath and prepared. Arya's hand hovered over the control. "This is for humanity." The Valiant's engines roared to life. The jump drive activated, pulling energy from every remaining system. The ship glowed with blinding blue light as it vanished into hyperspace right in front of the dreadnought's cannon. When the light faded, the Valiant was gone. The dreadnought's sensors went blank. Admiral Zerath stared at the empty space in disbelief. "Where did they go?" Commander Vera looked confused. "We've lost all trace. They're gone." Zerath's jaw tightened. "No, they're not gone. They're hiding, waiting." He turned away from the viewport, his voice low and uncertain. "They fight not for conquest, not for power, but for something greater. And that makes them dangerous." For 3 long hours, the Varkon fleet searched the void, scanning every fragment of rock and metal. The HSS Valiant had vanished completely, as if swallowed by the darkness. Even the Varkon sensors, known for their precision, found nothing. Admiral Zerath Kal stood on the bridge of the dreadnought, his cold eyes fixed on the star map. Around him, officers worked silently, afraid to speak. The Varkons were a race built on logic and control, but the human ship had shattered both. "How can one vessel disappear from every scanner?" Zerath demanded. Commander Vera, cautious and respectful, replied, "It is impossible, Admiral. But humans often do what logic calls impossible." Zerath's eyes narrowed. "Then find them. I want that ship destroyed. The longer it lives, the more dangerous it becomes." Across the galaxy, the legend of the Valiant was spreading. Human news networks whispered about a ghost ship, a lone warship defying an empire. Colonists sent messages of hope, and even Earth Command began to prepare in secret, building new fleets, inspired by the Valiant's bravery. But no one knew where the Valiant truly was. Far from any known star system, deep in the cold dark of hyperspace, the Valiant reappeared. The ship drifted silently, surrounded by glowing streaks of blue and gold light. The jump had almost destroyed it. Hull plating was scorched, several decks were uninhabitable, and many systems had failed completely. Inside, Captain Arya Grant slowly opened her eyes. The lights flickered weakly above her. Smoke hung in the air and alarms blinked red. She pushed herself to her feet, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. "Echo," she said weakly. "Status." The ship's AI replied, its voice distorted. "Main engines offline. Life support stable. Crew status, 77% operational." 77%, Arya repeated quietly. "We're still alive." Lieutenant Harris stumbled into the bridge, his uniform torn. "Captain, we made it. But I don't know where we are." The jump threw us off course. Arya looked out through the cracked viewport. Beyond the drifting clouds of gas, she saw something faint in the distance. An enormous shape, metallic and shining. "Magnify that image," she ordered. The screen zoomed in, revealing a colossal space station orbiting a dying star. It was massive, larger than any human structure. Strange symbols glowed across its surface. Echo spoke again. Scanning. "This structure is Varkon in origin. Unknown type. Possibly a supply base." Arya's eyes widened. "We're behind enemy lines." The crew fell silent. They had escaped one fleet only to find themselves in the heart of enemy territory. But Arya didn't panic. Instead, she smiled faintly. Then we have an opportunity. Over the next few hours, the crew worked tirelessly to restore what systems they could. Engineers patched wires, sealed air leaks, and rerouted power. The ship remained weak, but it was alive. Arya gathered her officers in the briefing room. The room was dimly lit, filled with the quiet hum of damaged systems. A holographic projection of the Varkon base hovered above the table. "This is our situation," Arya began. "We're deep in Varkon space. That station controls fuel and supply routes for their fleets. If we destroy it, their advance toward Earth will slow." Harris frowned. "Captain, we can't fight an entire base." "We don't have enough power," Arya nodded. "True, but we don't need to fight them directly. We only need to make them fear us." Her voice was calm but strong. "We'll strike from the shadows. One ship against an empire. We'll become the ghost they can't catch." The crew exchanged glances. It was madness. But madness had saved them before, and every person in that room trusted their captain completely. That night, the HSS Valiant became what history would later call the Phantom of the Stars. The crew hid the ship in the dense clouds surrounding the dying star, using its radiation to mask their energy signature. The Varkon station below continued its daily operations, unaware that death drifted above them. Under Arya's command, the Valiant launched small attack drones, each carrying explosives built from salvaged torpedoes. They moved like silent hunters, gliding through the dark toward the station's power grid. "Drone 1 in position," reported Chief Engineer Thomas Reed. "Detonate on my mark," Arya replied. She watched the station's defense systems on the screen, massive cannons, shield arrays, and patrol ships moving in steady patterns. Everything was precise, predictable. The Varkons trusted their technology completely. "Mark." The explosions bloomed in perfect sequence. The power grid failed instantly. The station's lights went dark and chaos erupted. The Varkon defense network scrambled to respond, firing blindly into space, and in the confusion, the Valiant struck. The human ship descended like a shadow, launching 2 torpedoes directly into the station's communication hub. The blast rippled across the entire structure, sending shockwaves through the station's core. On the Varkon command bridge, alarms screamed. Officers shouted in confusion. "Unknown attacker detected. Multiple breaches!" Admiral Zerath received the report moments later. "What do you mean, an unknown attacker? Which fleet is responsible?" The Varkon officer hesitated. "No fleet, Admiral. The energy signature, it matches the human ship." Zerath's eyes widened. "Impossible. That ship was destroyed." "Apparently not," the officer replied quietly. Zerath stood motionless. For the first time he felt uncertainty, not just about the battle, but about his own empire's control. "Send every available fleet to that station. Find them." Back near the dying star, the Valiant turned sharply, escaping the explosion's radius. The ship shook violently and sparks flew across the bridge. But when the light faded, the crew saw the impossible. The massive Varkon base breaking apart, fire spreading through its metallic skeleton. They had done it. One small, broken human ship had destroyed a fortress built by a galactic empire. Cheers erupted through the bridge. Even the tired faces of the engineers glowed with joy. "We did it, Captain," Harris shouted. "They'll remember this day." Arya smiled but didn't celebrate. She stared at the burning wreck in silence. "They'll come for us now." "All of them," Echo confirmed. "Incoming hyperspace signatures detected. Multiple fleets, Admiral Zerath's forces." Arya took a deep breath. "All right, everyone. Let's disappear again. If they want a ghost, we'll give them one." The Valiant activated its limited jump drive once more, vanishing into hyperspace just as the first Varkon reinforcements arrived. They found nothing, only wreckage, fire, and the fear of something they couldn't understand. Days passed. Across the Varkon Empire, reports began to spread. Supply ships destroyed, stations sabotaged, fleets ambushed in deep space. No one saw the attacker, but every wreck showed the same energy signature, the mark of the Valiant. The humans had become a nightmare whispered in every Varkon command center. They began to fear the dark between stars. Admiral Zerath called an emergency council. The Grand Hall of the Varkon High Command was filled with generals and scientists. Holographic maps displayed dozens of destroyed outposts. "They're everywhere," one general said angrily. "A single human ship cannot cause this much damage." Zerath spoke quietly. "And yet it has." The council fell silent as he continued. These humans, they fight not with superior power but with something we do not understand. They adapt. They learn. They endure. He paused, looking around the room. If one ship can do this, imagine what 100 could do. The thought hung in the air like a shadow. The Varkon Empire, once unstoppable, had finally met something it could not predict. Meanwhile, the Valiant hid in the outer rim of Varkon space. The crew was exhausted but proud. They had become more than soldiers. They were symbols. Captain Arya looked out at the stars from her command chair. Her ship was battered and scarred, yet still moving. Around her, her crew worked with quiet strength. Lieutenant Harris walked up beside her. "Captain, do you ever think we'll make it back home?" Arya smiled faintly. "One day. But even if we don't, Earth will know we were here. They'll know we fought." She placed her hand on the viewport, watching distant stars shimmer like promises. "The Varkons wanted to show the galaxy their power," she said softly. "But we'll show them something stronger." Harris asked, "And what's that?" Arya turned to him, her eyes bright. "The heart of humanity." The stars reflected in her gaze, and somewhere far away, Admiral Zerath looked at those same stars, wondering how a single warship could make his empire tremble. The galaxy was changing. Where once the Varkon Empire moved like a shadow over every star system, now whispers of resistance spread among the colonies. Every time a human ship struck, the message was clear. The Varkons were not invincible. The HSS Valiant had become more than a warship. It was a symbol, a single point of light against a dark and vast empire. From the outer rim to human colonies near the heart of the galaxy, fleets and civilians alike whispered of the human crew that dared to challenge an empire. On the Valiant's bridge, Captain Arya Grant stood over the tactical display, watching sensor readings carefully. The ship had survived countless attacks, but its systems were failing. Hull damage, energy shortages, and worn-out crew made every day a battle of endurance. Lieutenant Harris approached, carrying a tablet full of new reports. "Captain, Varkon patrols are increasing. They're trying to predict our next strike." Arya nodded. "Good, let them. That means we're unpredictable. They don't know where we'll hit next." Chief Engineer Thomas Reed wiped his hands and joined them. "Captain, we've managed to reroute enough power to weapons and shields for one more major assault. Beyond that, we risk total failure." Arya's gaze was steady. "Then we make it count. One strike, one chance," the crew of the Valiant understood. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting to inspire, to buy time for Earth and its colonies to prepare. Across the galaxy, Earth Command worked feverishly. Inspired by the Valiant's courage, scientists and military officers collaborated in ways never seen before. Entire fleets were being built from raw materials in months instead of years. Communications relays connected distant colonies, and humans shared technology freely, learning from one another at unprecedented speed. General Marcus Hale addressed a council of leaders. "One ship has shown us what humans can do. It is time to unite fully. Every colony, every fleet, every system. We must all stand together." A younger officer raised his hand. "Sir, the Valiant is alone. How can we trust one ship to guide us?" Hale's voice was firm. "Because it already has. One ship has slowed the greatest empire in the galaxy. One ship has proven that humans fight differently. Imagine what we can do together." Every human in that room felt hope, a spark that had been missing for centuries. Meanwhile, deep in Varkon space, Admiral Zerath Kal sat in his private chamber, staring at holomaps of the human fleet's activities. Reports of destroyed stations, ambushed fleets, and ghost attacks filled his displays. "This is impossible," he muttered. "One ship cannot achieve this. One ship should not be able to defy the entire empire." Commander Vera entered quietly. "Perhaps it is not the ship alone, Admiral. Perhaps it is their way of thinking, their unpredictability, their ability to endure the impossible." Zerath's jaw tightened. "Humans are illogical, and yet that illogic is effective." He paused, looking at the star systems beyond the viewport. For the first time, he wondered if the Empire's endless reliance on precision and planning was itself a weakness. "They fight with courage, not with logic," he said softly. "And courage can be stronger than technology." On the Valiant, preparations were underway for the most daring strike yet. The human crew would infiltrate a Varkon supply hub near a critical warp gate, the station through which entire fleets moved toward Earth. Destroy it, and the advance of the Varkons could be delayed for months. The plan was risky. The Valiant was low on resources, damaged from previous battles and exposed deep in enemy territory. One wrong move could mean destruction. Arya addressed her crew in the briefing room. "We're going into the heart of enemy space," she said. "The station is heavily defended, but that's why we're here. If we succeed, we slow the Empire. We buy Earth time, and we remind the galaxy that humans cannot be crushed." Her words resonated through the room. Engineers, gunners, and navigators nodded. They were tired, yet their eyes were bright with resolve. Harris stepped forward. "We've survived worse, and this time we strike with purpose. Every system we disable will protect millions at home." Arya smiled faintly. "Exactly. Let's move." The approach to the Varkon supply hub was tense. The Valiant dodged patrols, navigated dense asteroid fields, and used the last of its stealth systems to avoid detection. Every meter was a calculated risk. Inside the ship, Echo calculated hundreds of trajectories, evasive maneuvers, and attack plans. Every crew member held their breath as the station loomed ahead, massive and gleaming, bristling with weapons. "Shields at full," Echo announced. "Stealth mode engaged. Estimated time to strike 5 minutes. Arya's hand hovered over the control console. "Remember, the goal isn't to fight every ship. The goal is precision. Strike the hub and vanish. One hit can change the war." The Valiant's drones launched first, invisible streaks of metal moving silently toward the station. Explosions rippled as the energy grid was hit, alarms blaring across the hub. Varkon turrets fired blindly, but the drones moved too quickly to hit. Then the Valiant emerged from the shadows, its damaged hull glowing in the dim light of the station's reactors. "Fire everything we've got," Arya commanded. The ship unleashed torpedoes and railguns in perfect coordination. Sections of the station collapsed, energy lines exploded, and massive fire spread across the structure. The hub was destroyed. The Varkons scrambled to respond, but the Valiant vanished once more into the void. The victory sent ripples across the galaxy. Colonies that had once cowered before the Varkons now rallied together. Inspired by the Valiant, small fleets began to harass supply lines, sabotage patrols, and rescue prisoners. What had been despair became resistance. Even Earth Command grew bolder. With new fleets and technology inspired by the Valiant, humans were no longer simply defending, they were fighting back. Yet far from the stars, Admiral Zarath was unsettled. The humans did not follow logic, patterns, or strategy in the ways he expected. They adapted, endured, and struck unpredictably. "They are not just a species," he said quietly to Commander Vera. "They are a force. One that cannot be controlled, only challenged," Vera nodded. "Then we must learn from them, Admiral. Understand them before they reach Earth." Zarath's eyes glowed faintly. "Perhaps. But no empire has ever allowed one ship to dictate its fate. Not ever." And yet he could not shake the feeling that the rules had changed. That one human ship, battered and alone, had begun a chain reaction that might alter the course of the galaxy forever. Back on the Valiant, the crew rested briefly, but not for long. Every member knew that the Varkons would not stop. Every success was temporary, and yet despite exhaustion, morale soared. Harris approached Arya quietly. "Captain, do you ever wonder what makes humans different? Why we can fight like this?" Arya leaned against the viewport, gazing at the distant stars. "It's not technology, Harris. Not size, not strength. It's something they can't measure. We fight for hope, for people, for home. We fight because we choose to. That choice makes us dangerous." Harris nodded, understanding. The Valiant wasn't just a ship, it was an idea, a spark. And sparks, once ignited, could light the entire galaxy. The Valiant drifted quietly through space, a small, battered ship with a crew of humans who refused to bow. They were a whisper of courage, a shadow in the stars, a signal to the galaxy. Humanity would not be defeated. And far away, Admiral Zarath prepared for a confrontation unlike any he had faced before. For the first time, he felt a war that could not be won by force alone. A war where the heart and mind of a single species could shift the fate of countless worlds. The galaxy was no longer just his to command. It was now a battlefield of ideas, courage, and the human spirit. The stars trembled with the weight of war. The Varkon Empire had grown restless, frustrated, and fearful. A single human ship, HSS Valiant, had turned the galaxy upside down. For every station they destroyed, For every fleet they harassed, the Empire faltered, and whispers of resistance grew louder. Captain Arya Grant stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the holographic map of the approaching Varkon fleets. This was it, the final confrontation. The enemy had gathered its forces, over 50 ships, including the massive dreadnought, each bristling with weapons and shields stronger than anything the Valiant had faced. Lieutenant Harris leaned over the console. "Captain, they're coming in fast. Their weapons output is higher than before. If we engage directly, we'll be destroyed." Arya nodded calmly. "Then we don't engage directly. We make them fight on our terms." Chief Engineer Thomas Reed adjusted power conduits. "Captain, we can use the remaining jump drive to create multiple decoys, but it will leave the main ship vulnerable." Arya's eyes shone with determination. "Then we use it. It's time they learn that humans fight with more than just weapons. We fight with mind, courage, and heart." The plan was risky. The Valiant would split its energy into decoys, small holographic ships designed to mimic its signature. The real ship would move unseen, striking key targets in the Varkon formation. Every move relied on timing, precision, and the crew's unwavering trust in one another. "Echo," Arya said. "Initiate decoy sequence." The AI's calm voice replied. "Sequence initiated. 5 decoys activated. Energy signatures identical to main ship. Probability of enemy targeting the real ship, 32%. Arya smiled faintly. "Better than nothing. Let's go." The battle began. The Varkon fleet surged forward, energy weapons blazing across the void. Each decoy drew fire, exploding in brilliant flashes of light. Amidst the chaos, the Valiant moved like a shadow, its engines glowing blue as it weaved between asteroids and enemy ships. Harris fired the railguns with unmatched focus, targeting the dreadnought's shield emitters. Explosions rocked the massive Varkon ship as its shields flickered. The decoys had done their job, drawing fire away from the real threat. Thomas manipulated the ship's remaining torpedoes, sending them through narrow gaps in the enemy formation. Every hit crippled weapon arrays, disabled engines, and caused panic. The Varkons had never faced this kind of warfare. Admiral Zerath Kal aboard his dreadnought watched in disbelief. "Impossible. One ship cannot destroy my fleet with such efficiency." Commander Vera spoke quietly. "Admiral, it is not the ship. It is their strategy, their will. It cannot be predicted." Zerath's jaw tightened. "Then we must anticipate them, surround them, crush them." But even as he issued commands, the Valiant was already several steps ahead. The battle reached its climax near a dense asteroid cluster. The Varkons pursued relentlessly, convinced that sheer numbers would overwhelm the humans. Inside the Valiant, the crew prepared for a bold maneuver. "Captain," Harris said, "this could destroy us." "Are you sure?" Arya looked at him, steady and fearless. "We've survived impossible odds before. Trust the ship. Trust the crew. Trust humanity." The Valiant dove into the asteroid field, disappearing from sensors. The Varkon fleet followed blindly, crashing into debris and colliding with each other in confusion. Arya seized the moment. "Echo, full power to main cannon. Fire at the lead dreadnought." The ship's main weapon glowed bright blue, charging with all remaining energy. Harris guided the shot, calculating angles faster than any AI could. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The blast struck the dreadnought's weak point with perfect precision. Shields collapsed and fire spread across the massive hull. The flagship shuddered violently, unable to respond. Varkon ships faltered as their command structure crumbled. Panic spread among their ranks. One by one, cruisers were disabled or forced to retreat. The ghost of the Valiant haunted every ship, striking unpredictably, disappearing and striking again. Far across the galaxy, Earth Command monitored the battle. Communications from the Valiant were sparse but precise. General Marcus Hale spoke to his officers. "The Valiant has not only slowed the Varkons, it has shown the galaxy that we can resist. Prepare our fleets. Tonight we unite humanity." News channels broadcast the events across colonies. Civilians, scientists, and soldiers alike felt hope for the first time. Humanity was no longer passive. They were fighters, inspired by a single ship and its brave crew. Inside the Valiant, the crew worked tirelessly. Hull breaches were patched on the fly. Energy rerouted to shields and weapons, and every crew member pushed beyond exhaustion. Yet morale remained high. Harris approached Arya. "Captain, we've taken heavy damage. How much longer can we keep this up?" Arya gazed out the viewport at the burning remnants of the Varkon fleet. Long enough to make them believe humanity is unbreakable. The crew understood. They weren't just fighting to survive, they were fighting to inspire. Admiral Zirath, seeing his fleet falter, realized the truth. The humans were more than soldiers, they were clever, unpredictable, and fearless. They fought not for conquest, but for something far stronger: hope, courage, and the protection of their home. This war cannot be won with force alone, he admitted quietly. Perhaps there is more to victory than power. His officers stared in silence. For the first time, the great Varkon Empire faced the concept that there was something beyond strategy, something they could not calculate, something that even logic could not defeat. With one final maneuver, the Valiant executed a daring strike on the remaining Varkon ships. Using decoys, torpedoes, and railgun fire, they disabled every cruiser capable of following them. The survivors fled, retreating into distant space, leaving the human crew victorious. The ship floated in silence, battered but intact. The crew, exhausted beyond measure, allowed themselves a moment to breathe. They had faced the might of an empire and lived. Arya walked to the viewport, staring at the stars. "We've done more than survive," she said quietly. "We've shown the galaxy what humans are capable of. We've shown courage, hope, and that we will never bow." Harris stood beside her. "Do you think it's enough?" Arya smiled. "It's a beginning, and beginnings are what change worlds." Across the galaxy, whispers of the HSS Valiant spread like wildfire. Humans, inspired by courage and ingenuity, began uniting. Colonies built fleets, scientists shared knowledge, and diplomats forged alliances. The Varkon Empire had been slowed, not just by force, but by the human spirit. And somewhere far away, Admiral Zirath contemplated the lessons of the war. He had faced an empire, a fleet, and logic itself, but it was the heart of humanity that had outmaneuvered him. For the first time, he understood something the Varkons had never believed. Power could destroy planets. Strategy could conquer fleets. But courage, ingenuity, and the will to fight for something greater than oneself could change the galaxy. The HSS Valiant had not only survived, it had become legend. And in every colony, every ship, every human heart, the story lived on. One ship, one crew, one species, and together they had shown the universe that humans could stand against anything. The stars, once silent witnesses to countless wars, now held a new story. A story of hope, of resilience, and of a species that refused to bow. The galaxy had learned an unforgettable truth. Humanity fights differently. Humanity endures. Humanity triumphs, and the legend of the HSS Valiant would live forever.